Hey, welcome back to the Big Ranch Show. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about transgender rights yet again. Now, as you know, there have been some 400 anti-LGBTQ laws throughout the country that are making their way through state legislatures. And in a lot of those states, the prognosis isn't good, right? Those bills were passed in most states because there's so many people out there that just hate the community so much. They don't care if they hurt children. They don't care if children off themselves, unalive themselves, self-harm because of it. They don't care if children suffer from depression, anxiety, and worse because of not being able to live as the person they are. We're going to talk about good news today. We're talking about a few good things that happen when it comes to trans rights. It involves 3 different states. 2 states signed executive orders, and 1, the Supreme Court refused to hear their arguments. So, we're going to start with what's going on in West Virginia. A little schoolgirl, a transgender schoolgirl, wanted to play sports on her team. She's the only person that they know of in the entire state of West Virginia who is trans and wants to play school sports. Middle school, right? Really young. 10 or 11, something like that, like really young. And she's one of the only ones that want to play. West Virginia went out of their way to create a transgender sports ban, specifically because of one child. So not some rampant problem of, men trying to, transition to women just so they can win sports. No, there was one little kid. And West Virginia passed that law about a year or so ago, and they've been fighting it ever since, back and forth. They went to there's been an injunction put in place while it all gets worked out. And they wanted to, the state of West Virginia wanted to fight that in court. And the Supreme Court said, no, we're not going to hear that right now. Now, this doesn't mean that they are going to rule in favor of the little kid or in favor of trans children in West Virginia at the Supreme Court ultimately. But what this does say right now is it kind of sends a message that we're not going to rush our judgment. That's what it tells me. Even though I can't stand this court, the Supreme Court is the most radical Supreme Court in my entire lifetime. We've had leans to the left, leans to the right since I was a kid, but never have we had an absolute radical, far right, extreme Supreme Court. They took the time this time to say, no, we're not going to hear that case right now. Now, of course, there was dissension, right? 2 of the judges said that they would have ruled in favor of it had it gone to them. But at the end of the day, the Supreme Court ruled that they are not going to hear it right now, and so that case the injunction in place for that law will continue to be. In other good news, in both New Jersey and Minnesota, there have been executive orders signed that have declared their states safe havens for transgender people trying to get treatment. In Michigan, the governor signed a law that's basically doesn't really change the laws necessarily, but he changed signed an executive order that makes it clear that Minnesota will not, extradite to other states people who are seeking transgender care for themselves or their children. As well as in New Jersey, they did the same thing. New Jersey is apparently a lot easier to deal with if you're trans, from what I've been seeing. If I could deal with the cold and I could afford to live there, I would probably move in a heartbeat. In New Jersey, it's not difficult to change your ID, it's your gender marker or anything like that. It's really simple, apparently. It's not all that difficult at all. But now they've made sure that it is a safe haven for people that need transgender affirming care. whether you're an adult or a child. Now, neither one of these states are going to sit there and make it free for you. Of course not, right? That's what insurance is supposed to be for, supposedly, even though most of us can't afford insurance. But you can be safe in those states to get your gender affirming care. And I think that's awesome. We need more states that are willing to do this. I believe that puts them in line with like California on the trans issue. And I think it's awesome because more people need gender affirming care. Like myself, there are things I would love, but I can't afford. And I know how much it hurts me on a daily basis. And I live in a state where they're trying to ban my existence to begin with. So trust me, I feel you. If you're in one of these red states that are trying to ban your existence or ban your ability to have the life saving, affirming care that you need, I feel you. I really do. And I wish more of us could just up and leave wherever we're stuck at. I wish more of us could just up and go to Michigan or Minnesota or New Mexico that are, or in New Jersey and California. But I know for a lot of people, those places aren't affordable or the ability to move is not possible. That's why we need this to happen in more states. We need more states to have governors that have the intestinal fortitude to come forward and say, "Hey, we're not gonna hurt these people." And all I've ever said when it comes to trans rights is, I don't care if you agree with us. I don't care if you don't want to be trans. That's fine. Nobody cares. No one's trying to make you trans. No one's trying to make you anything. All we're asking is that you don't hurt us. You don't have to support us, but please don't hurt us. That's all I've ever said. You don't have to have my opinion. You don't have to hold my views. But don't hurt us. I can't believe that is too much to ask in 2023 in the United States of America, land of the free. We're supposed to be free, right? Yet trans people are only free in 4 states. 3 states. New Mexico hasn't quite got there yet. California, Minnesota, and New Jersey. And they don't seem to be attacking trans rights in Michigan. New York is on board trying to, get it to where kids can be, assured that they can get the transgender affirming care they need as same as adults. And let's clear up some misinformation here. And I always hate that I have to go through this all the time. People are not mutilating children in mass. There are guidelines for all of it, from the American Pediatric Association and other institutes that deal with children's health. Now, there's always going to be somebody somewhere that's going to break the rules, right? And that should be kept few and far between. But let's talk about children getting transgender affirming care. For a child under the age of, say, 16, 17 years old, depending, in general, all they generally do for that, besides having counseling sessions, is a social transition where they change their name. They might grow their hair out some. They'll dress as the gender that they aspire to be. And that's usually it. Even from the research I've read, most children do not go on puberty blockers. Not because they may not want, or that they don't want them, but their gender dysphoria may not be exacerbated by going through puberty. or it may be able to be, kept, the gender dysphoria can be handled. The anxiety, depression can be handled through counseling sessions and teaching them coping skills, right? But there are those that, if it's clear that going through a male or female puberty would be absolutely detrimental to their mental health, then yeah, they'll use puberty blockers. You've got people out there like Candace Owens sitting there claiming that these puberty blockers, and you've got a trans woman on TikTok saying puberty blockers have the potential to completely sterilize a child. Yes, in the wrong dosage, yeah, it could. Because the same medication is used to castrate um, on sex offenders, to chemically castrate sex offenders. But guess what happens when you come off that medication? It generally comes back. Hmm. Um, but the thing is, at the high doses they give sex offenders, yeah, it can completely sterilize you. But it's a matter of dosage. I don't know if you remember a few years ago that Dr. Oz sounded the alarm on arsenic and apple juice. Um, you know, a natural occurring thing in apples. But at the lowest dose, at the low dose that's in the apples and apple juice comes from the apple juice, it's not a problem. It doesn't affect humans. It's all about dosing, right? And there's no other reason to be concerned about it. Yes, there are potential side effects. Every drug has potential side effects. There are issues with possible adrenal gland issues and possible issues with bones and bone density in the future. Possible. It all depends on how long they're on the puberty blocking hormones. And it's minimal. But there are a lot of treatments out there that have possible side effects like these, or worse, that you still give your children every single day. If your child had leukemia and the doctors presented you with a cure that has the potential for bad side effects down the road, but they would still be living and you would still be able to survive and they would be able to survive, would you not do it? Or do you just let them die? And in some situations, that's the situation that parents are left with when they have trans kids. You don't seem to understand that, to the conservatives out there that hated on that video I put out Friday. The trans people are still people. Trans kids are still people. And the parents are still people. You seem to just think that you can just be angry at people for no reason without even trying to walk a mile in their shoes. And the reason you can't walk a mile in their shoes is you'd never be able to stand it. You would hate it. These kids, they don't ask for much. They just ask to survive. And that's all their parents are trying to do. Gender affirming care has shown that 73% of the time, right, or more, that it lowers the risk of suicide and suicidal ideation. Getting affirming care helps trans people, whether it's a social transition or they get hormones later in life. But I remember being that kid. I remember not wanting to live because I wasn't who I wanted to be and who my mind was telling me to be. I remember going through puberty and thinking, well, this isn't right. And then I just hid myself for decades until it came to a point that I didn't want to live anymore. And I finally came out. And I can tell you, over the last few years since I came out, best decision of my life. I just wish I had started my transition when I was younger. One, I wouldn't have been such a self-loathing asshole. I lashed out at a lot of people, lost a lot of good friends over the years because I was so angry because of what I was hiding, that I couldn't see the good in people. Right? That I couldn't go and enjoy. I didn't go and enjoy life because I didn't like life. And now I'm out. Right? Also, if I was younger, if I'd come out when I was younger, maybe I could have got the treatments I needed that could have prevented my depression and anxiety. And I can tell you, over the last 3 years, I have gone through some stuff that if I had not been out or starting to come out to people I knew, I wouldn't have survived. If I hadn't been living as myself last year, there's some things that happened that I wouldn't survive. Namely, the loss of my cat, who I'd had for 18 years. And it's just it's disheartening to see all these other states working to hurt trans youth. Because I was there, I saw it. I know what I felt. I know what I saw going on in my life. Because up until puberty, I never had a thought that I wasn't right when it came to, being mentally right. I knew that I didn't match the gender I was supposedly born as. You know, knowing that there's a difference. That's another thing I learned. Those people don't seem to know there's a difference between gender and sex. They think they're the same thing. They're not. Of course, I didn't know that when I was a kid. In fact, like I said in my last video, or one of my last videos, I didn't even have a word for it. I didn't even know what, I was. Because when I was a kid, I didn't know what to think. You know? Before my parents ever said anything about boy toys or girl toys or any of that stuff, I was already feeling feminine. And I didn't know what it was. Then as I got older, I was drawn to more feminine things. There was a point when, I thought maybe I could just not, right? And I tried. I met my wife, and I guess my junior year, senior year, something like that, in high school. And because of her, I put it all away. That also made me a terrible husband. Because I'd be angry all the time. Which led to a lot of other problems in our relationship. So the only thing I could tell anybody out there is hiding it is not the solution. Hiding who you are, all it will do is create a sadness, a self-loathing And I don't want anybody to have to go through that. And so that's why I am here time and again making videos talking about the trans community, talking about accepting the trans community, talking about, if nothing else, just don't hurt us. Just don't pass laws to try and ban our existence just because you don't understand. I don't understand being straight. I really don't. I couldn't for the life of you explain how to be straight. For the life of me, could not explain to you how to go by a man and not be wondering if they'd be interested, right? Or finding them attractive. I know in high school it was sensory overload a lot of times because there were the guys and there were the girls and then there was me trying to play straight boy. I can tell you, I failed miserably most of the time. Um, but anyhow, those few states are doing what they can. You got some states that are still trying. You've got New Mexico that's working on trying to make themselves a safe place for transgender kids and adults. You've got people in the U.S. House that are trying to go against us, but then you got people in the Senate trying to help us. The fact is, we need the equality law passed. The Equality Act needs to be passed immediately. The problem is, the Republicans will not pass it in the House. And they won't even bring it to the floor because they're scared, because they have such a razor thin margin that if they bring it to the floor, they're scared that they'll lose the vote. Because all it takes is one or two defections from their party to show that little bit of empathy for the trans community, and the Equality Act passes and would be signed by the president. I'm still pissed at the Democratic Party for not pushing harder to get it passed while we still had the House and the Senate. But we've got to keep fighting. That's all we can do. And to all those haters that were in my last video, if you've come back for another video, welcome back to the channel. But I will say this to those haters. You're not going to get me down with all your hate comments. You're not going to bother any of us. We just laugh at your comments. That's really all we do. Because it shows that you're ignorant and uneducated. And that you have no clue what's actually going on in the trans community. You know what? I don't necessarily hold that against you. Why do I say that? Because, like I said, I don't understand the straight community. I don't understand how that works. I don't understand how it is to just go after the opposite sex and be like, oh, that's all I want. I don't know how that works. And so, with that said, I hope y'all are having a good day, and I'll see you down the road.